Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Strays. The Strays is a British horror thriller that tells the story of Neve, a woman living in an upper-class suburb and working as a deputy headmistress at her children's private school. Despite living an idealistic lifestyle, it's preceded by a dark past which comes back to haunt her. While raising money and awareness for a gala, she becomes tormented by two individuals who've mysteriously moved into her community. She tries her best to maintain her life as she set it up to be, but it isn't long before these two figures start to unravel it and force her to confront her past in terrifying ways. I can see where this movie was planning to go as far as how it examines its numerous social themes, but as it is now, it fails to live up to its potential. It's a mediocre horror thriller that features excellent performances and subtext, but it gets bogged down by weird writing and baffling tonal shifts that leave it a bit of a mess. The main character, Neve, was probably the best part of the movie for me, mostly thanks to Ashley Medicquay's performance. She's convincing in the role of someone who's managed to turn their life around following a tragic past, but also in a way where she still tries to hide from it to avoid further consequences. The mystery behind how she's affected by it is unfortunately easy to predict early on due to how her character is introduced, but she still comes across as sympathetic. She tries her best to provide an ideal life for her family while coming to terms with her racial identity. The latter of these two proved to be the more interesting of these two facets to her character, though not explored to its full potential. Throughout the movie, she refuses to acknowledge her black identity and hides it in different ways so that her kids aren't discriminated against by other members of her community. I like this idea of how a woman transforms and loses herself, and how her actions come back to bite her later. It's alluded to with various things like her scratching her hair while wearing wigs, to purposefully arranging the gala to benefit African children. There's just a lot of attention to detail to how Neve toes the line with her racial identity that makes her fascinating to watch. This being said, there were a few times where the movie confused me on what it was trying to say in this regard. Even though Neve runs from her past as a black woman, it isn't necessarily brushed under the rug, as her husband seems aware of it, and her kids even say out loud that they're black. Now, she does try to stop them from acknowledging this, which makes sense to a point, but I eventually found myself wondering why, as nothing serious ever happens from the fact that she and her children are black, and outside of one or two isolated incidents, no one ever makes a big deal out of it. I can understand the idea of internalized racism and how Neve would put her new identity as white ahead of black, but there's no information given as to why she chose this path. Only the vaguest of details are given behind her past, and no information is given as to how she built up her life to where it is when the plot actually begins. It does a bit better with its racial themes as far as how it connects them to another one with regards to wealth, but again, it's far from perfect. Neve and her family enjoy a privileged lifestyle that differs from the other characters who torment her, which suggests that people in white neighborhoods live better than those in black ones. I don't know enough about that subject area to comment on it in depth, but the movie definitely has a clear message about the economic disparity between races in Britain. Given more time and better writing, this could have been applied to Neve for greater dramatic effect, but instead the movie gets hampered by its cliche portrayals of wealth. I couldn't help but laugh at the fact that Neve listened to nothing but classical music, as if that's all that rich people ever listen to, and just the fact that the relatively busy town she lives in doesn't feature a single visible minority other than her and her kids felt cheap and unrealistic. It just felt like a really old and outdated concept of what a rich neighborhood is supposed to be. Outside of the movie's themes, most of the attention is drawn to the new arrivals in town, who turn out to be Carl and Dion. These two frustrated me with their characterization, because I wanted to sympathize with their circumstances as they came from legitimately heartbreaking backgrounds. However, the movie constantly makes them out to be these sinister forces that have it out for Neve and her family, and it doesn't ever feel warranted. I can understand why they would be resentful and even aggressive toward her, but not to the degree that they try to ruin her life and how they go about doing it. This is where the movie runs into its biggest problem, in that it tries to be both a drama and a psychological thriller. The mystery behind Carl and Dion's sudden presence does generate some dramatic intrigue as to how they connect to Neve, but it loses its impact when the movie presents them as sort of stalker-like slasher villains. There will be long stretches of time where nothing happens, and then all of a sudden Neve will freak out and see and hear things that others don't. I didn't understand why the movie chose this hybrid presentation, because it leaves its pacing and tension all over the place, especially since Carl and Dion don't deserve to be made out as villains in the first place. It's a shame because there are things the movie gets right as a thriller. I love how the music changes in certain scenes as it goes from Neve's classical music to this dark ambience that takes over the mood, and the way the cinematography is framed in certain shots gives this feeling of unease, like something disturbing is about to be revealed or uncovered. Sadly, the potential payoff for this is wasted with how disappointingly shallow it is and how it observes its story and themes. Everything that's covered from racism to child abandonment to wealth is only examined at surface level, so while the attempts to address them are admirable, they only go so far. At the very least, the movie's story is structured well in spite of how sloppy the actual writing within it is. It's paced out in 5 sections, with the first and last sort of serving as bookends for everything that happens in between, and this gave a relative sense of consistency as to how Carl and Dion try to worm their way into Neve's lives and how she tries to keep them away. I could mostly tolerate the weird portrayal of the characters up until the finale, which was just straight up bizarre to the point of being comical. Any sort of nuances it may have had at that point with its observations on classism and racism went completely out the window in that scene. And I don't like saying that, because this movie clearly has its heart in the right place as far as trying to address racial identity and the consequences that come with changing and or conforming with it. If it had been presented as just a drama with some psychological elements, it might have been fine, but as a thriller/horror flick, it ends up with too many tonal inconsistencies for me to take it seriously. Overall, The Strays is an average horror thriller whose identity crisis negatively affects the impact it could have had with its social messages. If you like psychological thrillers and you're okay with odd pacing and tonal shifts, you might enjoy checking this out. This movie does stand out from other thrillers with social topics behind them, but not always for the right reasons. The way it's juxtaposed between drama and thriller feels disjointed to the point that it hurts the quality of the movie, and while it has its moments, most of the time it feels astray and directionless. What did you think about this movie? Did you like the way it balanced between genres, or did you also find it disappointing like I did? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of The Strays. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Japanese drama Call Me Chihiro. Bye bye!